Jack moved through the alien marketplace, eyes darting over strange fruits, glowing fabrics, and creatures that looked like walking shells. The air was warm and thick with smells he could not name. Voices in dozens of languages overlapped. He was just passing through, curious, not planning to stay long. A sharp cry cut through the noise. Jack turned and saw a small crowd forming near a narrow stall. In the middle, a young alien woman with pale blue skin and dark, braided hair stood trapped against a wall. 3 alien men, broad-shouldered and swaying like they had been drinking, blocked her way. They spoke in a harsh tongue, laughing between words. One reached for her braid. She slapped his hand away, but he only grinned wider. Jack stepped closer without thinking. "Hey!" His voice rose above the crowd. The aliens turned, surprised to see a human. Jack walked forward, his stance firm. "Leave her alone." The tallest one sneered and took a step toward him. Jack caught the faint sour smell of strong alcohol. He didn't wait for things to get worse. He grabbed the alien's wrist, twisting hard. The man yelped and stumbled back. The other 2 lunged, but Jack ducked and shoved one into a table stacked with strange metal bowls. They clanged to the ground, startling nearby shoppers. The crowd muttered. A few began to back away, sensing trouble. The blue-skinned woman used the moment to slip past the last man. She ran to Jack's side, breathing fast. The 3 drunks cursed at them, but someone in the crowd shouted for the guards, and they backed away, spitting on the ground before disappearing into the flow of people. The woman turned to Jack, her large, dark eyes fixed on him. For a moment, she said nothing, just looking at him as if weighing something in her mind. Then she stepped closer. "You helped me?" she said softly. Her voice had a strange lilt, almost like music. Jack shrugged. "Couldn't just watch." Her lips curved into a small smile. Then she leaned in quickly, surprising him. He felt a sudden pressure and sharpness on the side of his hand. He flinched, pulling back slightly. "Ouch!" he laughed, shaking his hand. "You bit me?" Her eyes sparkled, but she didn't answer. Instead, she stepped back, her smile fading just a little. Around them, Jack noticed several aliens had stopped walking. They stared openly, whispering to each other. He frowned, glancing at his hand. There was no blood, just the faint impression of her teeth. "What was that for?" he asked, half laughing, half confused. The woman's gaze flicked toward the watching crowd, then back to him. "It is? Thanks," she said, but her tone was strange, as if she were hiding something. Before Jack could say more, a shadow moved nearby. 2 alien guards in dark armor had appeared at the edge of the market. They stood very still, eyes fixed on him and the woman. One of them tapped a small device, speaking quietly into it. Jack's neck prickled. "Friends of yours?" She didn't answer. Instead, she took his wrist, pulling him toward a side alley. Her grip was firm, almost urgent. "Come," she said quickly. They slipped into the narrow passage, the sound of the market fading behind them. The alley was damp and smelled faintly of rust. She led him through twists and turns until they stopped beside a high wall covered in alien script. She finally let go of his wrist. "You must leave this place," she said, her voice low. "Now." Jack stared at her. "You're welcome, by the way. And maybe you could explain why the guards looked like they wanted to arrest me?" She hesitated, looking down at his hand. The faint bite mark was still visible. "You do not understand what you have done," she whispered. He frowned. "What I've done? You're the one who bit me." Her eyes lifted to meet his, and for the first time he saw fear there. "On my world," she said slowly, "a bite means more than thanks. It is a claim, a promise. You..." She paused, her voice dropping even lower. "You are mine now." Jack blinked at her, then laughed, thinking she was joking. "Right. Sure. Because you bit my hand." But she didn't laugh with him. She only stepped closer, eyes darting to the mouth of the alley as if expecting someone. "Others will come," she said. "They will not ask what you want. They will take you." The distant sound of boots on stone echoed through the narrow streets. Jack's amusement faded. "Who's coming?" She grabbed his wrist again, pulling him toward another dark passage. "Move," she said. "If they find us, it will be too late." As they slipped deeper into the maze of alleys, Jack's mind raced. The bite, the stairs, the guards. It didn't make sense. But one thing was clear. Whatever she had done, it had just made him part of something far bigger than he understood. And somewhere behind them, a deep, metallic voice growled through the streets. "The claim has been made. Prepare the trials." Jack woke to the faint sound of tapping on metal. For a moment, he thought it was part of a dream, but then the noise came again, sharper. He opened his eyes and saw dim morning light filtering through the cracks in the wall of the small room. Lyra stood near the window, peeking outside with tense shoulders. "What's going on?" he asked, sitting up on the thin mattress. She didn't look at him. "They found where you stayed last night. We must go now." Jack rubbed his face. "Who's they?" "The ones who will take you," she said simply, pulling a hood over her head. Before he could argue, a heavy thud rattled the door. Both of them froze. Another thud followed, and a deep voice spoke in a language Jack didn't understand. Lyra's eyes met his for a second, and then she was moving. She pulled him toward a back door he hadn't noticed before. They slipped into a narrow corridor that smelled of oil and damp cloth. Behind them, the front door slammed open, boots clattering against the floor. Jack didn't look back. Lyra led him through twisting hallways until they reached an exit that opened into the blinding light of the marketplace. The stalls were busier than yesterday. Colors, voices, and strange smells crashed over him at once. Lyra didn't slow down. She pushed through the crowd, keeping a tight hold on his wrist. Jack tried to keep up, but his mind was still stuck on the bite and the strange words she had said. "You are mine now." They turned down another street, smaller and quieter. Jack finally pulled his hand free. "You need to tell me what's happening. I'm not going another step until you explain." She stopped, her hood shadowing her face. "I bit you in the open," she said. "The elders know. The warriors know. A claim in public cannot be undone. You are part of my house now." Jack blinked at her. "Your house? Like a family?" "Clan," she corrected. "And my clan is not safe. Others want to take me. Now they must take you too." Before he could respond, a sharp whistle pierced the air. Lyra's head snapped toward the sound. 3 armored aliens stepped out from behind a row of crates. Their armor was dark bronze, marked with jagged patterns. Each carried a long, hooked staff. "Run," she said. They bolted. The aliens shouted and gave chase, their heavy boots pounding against the stone. Jack and Lyra darted between market stalls, knocking over baskets of glowing fruit. A merchant shouted angrily, but the sound was swallowed by the noise of pursuit. Lyra ducked into a tight alley barely wide enough for 2 people. Jack followed, his shoulder scraping the rough wall. The passage twisted sharply and opened into a cluttered courtyard. A fence blocked the far side. Lyra leapt at it without slowing. Jack swore under his breath and scrambled after her, his fingers slipping on the smooth metal bars. He pulled himself over just as one of the armored warriors reached the fence. They ran again, the streets narrowing and bending in every direction. Jack's legs burned. "Do you even know where we're going?" he gasped. "Yes," Lyra said, though her voice was tight. "Somewhere they cannot follow without permission." Eventually, they stopped before a tall gate carved from black stone. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its surface. 2 alien guards in long white robes stood there, holding ceremonial spears. Lyra spoke quickly in her language, gesturing to Jack. The guards glanced at him with unreadable expressions, then stepped aside. The gate creaked open. They slipped inside, and the sound of the market faded behind them. The space beyond was quieter, the air cooler. It was a courtyard filled with pale trees and smooth stone benches. Lyra finally lowered her hood. Jack leaned against a tree, trying to catch his breath. "Okay, I think I deserve some answers now." She walked to a small fountain, dipping her hands in the water. "You will be taken to the council," she said. "They will decide if you are worthy to stand as my chosen." Jack frowned. Chosen for what? Her gaze lifted to his. For life, for bond, for protection of my clan's name. "That sounds like marriage," he said slowly. Her expression didn't change. "It is marriage. Here, but you must fight for it. The trials will test your body, your mind, and your loyalty. If you fail," she hesitated, "you will die." Jack stared at her, searching for a sign that she was exaggerating. There was none. A shadow fell over them as the robed guards returned. One gestured for Jack to follow. Lyra's voice was quiet but firm. "Do not speak unless asked. Do not refuse anything, and do not let them see fear." Jack took a deep breath. "Right, because that'll be easy." As they walked toward the council chamber, he caught a final glimpse of the street beyond the gates. The armored warriors were still there, watching, their hooked staffs resting against their shoulders. One of them met his gaze and smiled, not with friendliness, but with the promise of trouble. The council chamber was a vast circular hall lit by shafts of pale light from the domed ceiling. The walls were covered with murals showing alien warriors locked in battles, victories carved into stone. The air was cool but heavy, carrying the faint scent of burning herbs. Jack walked beside Lyra, feeling dozens of eyes on him. The chamber was full. Elders in long robes sat in high, curved seats, their expressions unreadable. Between them stood guards in armor, hands on their spears. Every face seemed to weigh and measure him. At the center of the room was a raised platform with a wide circle marked in glowing lines. Lyra stepped onto it without hesitation. Jack followed, his boots clicking on the polished floor. A deep voice echoed from the high seat directly ahead. "You stand before the High Council of Vera," the elder announced. His voice was slow, each word carrying weight. "A claim has been made in public. The human has accepted the mark of bite." Jack opened his mouth to protest, but Lyra's quick glance warned him to stay silent. The elder's gaze turned to him. "You are now bound to her name, but a claim must be proven. According to the ancient law, you must face the trial of blood." Jack's stomach tightened. Trial of blood did not sound like a friendly game. "The first trial begins at sunset," the elder continued. "You will face a beast of our choosing. Survive, and you will advance. Fail, and your blood will feed the sand." There was a low murmur from the crowd. Some looked excited, others doubtful. Lyra stepped forward. "He will fight, and he will win." The elder nodded slowly, as if humoring her confidence. "So it is decided." He gestured to the guards. "Prepare the arena." Jack was led down winding corridors beneath the chamber. The stone walls grew damp, the air colder. Lyra walked beside him until the guards stopped her at a heavy iron gate. "Only fighters beyond this point," one said. Lyra caught Jack's arm. "Do not try to match the beast's strength. Use its size against it. And remember, you must make the crowd believe you are worthy." Before he could answer, the guards pulled him through the gate. The holding room smelled of dust and old blood. Faint roars echoed from somewhere beyond the walls. Another guard handed him a short spear and a round shield. The spear's metal head was dark and slightly curved. Jack gripped it, testing its weight. "Any chance you'll tell me what I'm fighting?" he asked. The guard's mouth twitched in something like a smile. "You'll know soon enough." The gate on the far side creaked open. Bright light spilled in. The sound of a crowd swelled, echoing in the stone chamber. Jack stepped forward into the arena. The sand beneath his boots was warm. Stone walls rose high around the pit, packed with spectators shouting in a mix of voices. Across from him, another gate opened. The roar that came through it made his skin prickle. A creature emerged, massive and scaled, with 4 legs and a tail that whipped the air. Its head was wide, jaws lined with teeth like curved daggers. Its eyes locked on him instantly. The beast moved with surprising speed, crossing half the arena in seconds. Jack barely dodged as it lunged, sand spraying around them. The spear felt too short, the shield too small. The crowd roared when the beast's tail smashed the ground where he'd been standing. Jack kept moving, circling, watching its steps. He saw how its front legs carried most of its weight. It lunged again, snapping at him. Jack thrust the spear forward, catching it in the side of the mouth. The metal cut flesh, but not deep enough to stop it. It swung its head violently, ripping the spear from his grip. Now he had only the shield. The beast came again, faster. Jack raised the shield and rolled under its neck, coming up behind it. He spotted a thick leather tether wrapped around one of its rear legs, part of the creature's harness. An idea struck him. He grabbed the tether and pulled with all his strength, forcing the leg to twist. The beast stumbled, crashing to one knee. The crowd gasped. Jack grabbed the dropped spear and rammed it into the creature's exposed throat, just under the jaw. The beast thrashed, its tail lashing wildly, but he held on, driving the weapon deeper. With a final shudder, it collapsed onto the sand. For a moment, the arena was silent. Then the crowd erupted, voices echoing against the walls. Jack stood, chest heaving, his clothes streaked with sand and blood that wasn't his. Guards entered, dragging the beast away. From the high seat above, the elder's voice boomed. "The human has passed the first trial." Jack looked up, searching for Lyra. She stood at the edge of the arena, her eyes fixed on him. She didn't smile, but he could see it, the faint spark of something like pride. The elder's voice lowered, but the weight of it still carried. "Prepare him for the next test." The celebration in the arena was short-lived. As Jack was led out through the gate, the roar of the crowd faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of boots on stone. The guards said nothing, their faces expressionless. They guided him through a side passage that wound upward until they reached a smaller chamber with tall windows and a wide balcony. Lyra was already there, standing near the edge, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The sky was streaked with orange and gold as the sun began to sink. She turned when Jack entered, scanning him quickly as if to make sure he was unharmed. "You did well," she said quietly. "The crowd saw your strength. That matters." Jack leaned against the wall, still catching his breath. "Glad to hear it. Now maybe someone can tell me what's next." Before Lyra could answer, the heavy doors swung open. A tall alien male stepped inside, his armor gleaming like dark steel. His build was powerful, his jaw sharp, and his eyes fixed on Jack with open disdain. "Karek," Lyra said, her tone tight. The warrior stopped a few steps away from Jack, looking him up and down as if judging an inferior weapon. "So this is the human who thinks he can claim what is mine." Jack straightened. "I'm not here to—" Karek cut him off. "The council may honor the old laws, but I will not stand by while a weak outsider takes my place." He looked at Lyra. "You know the bond should be sealed with a warrior of Vera blood." Lyra's eyes hardened. "The bond is already made." Karek's voice dropped to a growl. "Not until the final trial, and I will be the one you face, human. I challenge you in the right of the blade." Jack blinked. "You mean fight to the death?" Karek's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "To the first kill, or until the opponent cannot stand. Either way, you will not walk away." Without waiting for a reply, Karek turned and strode out, his armor clinking softly. The doors closed behind him with a deep thud. Jack looked at Lyra. "He doesn't seem like the friendly type." "He's dangerous," she said, stepping closer. "Karek was trained since childhood to fight. He's won every duel he's entered. He uses poison on his blades." Jack raised his brows. "Poison? And that's allowed?" "In the right of the blade, anything is allowed," Lyra said grimly. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. "Great. So how exactly do you expect me to beat him?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Karek is strong, but he is proud, too proud. He believes no one can outmatch him. If you make him angry, he will stop thinking. He will try to overpower you quickly, and that is when you turn his speed against him." Jack smirked faintly. "So, make him mad. That I can do." Later that night, the courtyard outside the arena was lit with tall fire bowls, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. The crowd gathered again, their voices buzzing with anticipation. The arena floor had been cleared of sand and replaced with smooth black tiles. Jack stepped out from one side, a short sword in his hand, the hilt wrapped in leather. Across from him, Karek emerged, his armor gleaming under the firelight. He carried two curved blades, each coated with a faint, dark sheen that made Jack's skin crawl. The elder's voice echoed from above. "The right of the blade begins. Fight with honor." Karek didn't wait. He charged, both blades flashing. Jack barely parried the first strike, the impact jarring his arm. The second blade came low, and he jumped back just in time to avoid it slicing across his leg. The crowd roared. Karek pressed forward, his attacks fast and relentless. Jack focused on blocking and dodging, giving ground inch by inch. He could feel the heat of the fire bowls, smell the faint metallic tang of the poisoned blades as they cut the air. "You fight like a child," Karek taunted. "I've seen animals with more skill." Jack grinned. "Then it's going to be embarrassing for you when I win." Karek's eyes narrowed. His strikes grew wilder, heavier. Jack kept backing away, letting him tire. The warrior swung high, and Jack ducked, driving his shoulder into Karek's chest. The larger man stumbled, and Jack slashed across his arm. The cut wasn't deep, but it made Karek snarl. He came at Jack with renewed fury, swinging both blades in a blur. Jack stepped aside, letting one blade hit the wall, the impact sending a shock through Karek's wrist. Seizing the moment, Jack kicked his opponent's knee. Karek staggered, and Jack swept his leg, sending him crashing to the ground. One of Karek's blades skittered across the tiles. Jack pinned him with a knee on his chest, pressing his sword to the warrior's throat. The crowd went silent. "Yield," Jack said. Karek's jaw clenched, but the pressure of the blade didn't move. Finally, he hissed, "I yield." The elder's voice rose. "The human has won the right of the blade. He advances to the final claim." Jack stood, stepping back as Karek was pulled away by guards. Lyra appeared at his side, her eyes bright in the firelight. "You did it," she said, a hint of relief in her tone. Jack looked at her, still breathing hard. "One more trial, right?" She nodded slowly. "One more, and it will decide everything." Jack didn't sleep that night. The firelight from the courtyard still burned in his mind, along with the sound of the crowd chanting after his victory over Karek. His body ached from the duel, but it was the thought of the final trial that kept him awake. When the first pale light of morning touched the stone walls, a guard came to fetch him. Lyra was waiting in a small chamber near the arena, her expression unreadable. She handed him a cup of cool water and studied him for a long moment. "You fought well yesterday," she said quietly, "but the last trial is not the same as the others." Jack took a slow drink. "What's different about it?" Her voice was low. "It is not only a test of skill, it is a test of loyalty. You will face choices meant to break you." He set the cup down. "Choices?" Lyra glanced at the guards near the doorway before leaning closer. "They will try to make you doubt me. They will offer you freedom. If you take it, the bond is broken, and I—" She paused, her jaw tightening. "I will be given to another clan." Jack didn't look away from her. "That's not going to happen." A horn sounded outside, deep and resonant. The guards stepped forward, gesturing for him to follow. Jack walked beside Lyra until they reached the massive gates of the arena. She stopped him there, her hand tightening on his arm. "Remember," she said, "do not believe their words, no matter what they show you." The gates opened, and sunlight poured in. The arena looked different from before. No sand, no tiles. Instead, the floor was covered with uneven stones and high wooden stakes. A narrow bridge of rope and planks stretched over a pit filled with jagged rocks. The elder's voice rang out from above. "The trial of heart begins. Cross the bridge and reach the other side. But know this, every step will test you." Jack stepped forward. The first plank creaked under his weight. The crowd was silent now, watching intently. As he moved on to the second plank, a strange shimmer appeared in the air ahead of him. The shimmer grew until it formed an image, Lyra, standing in chains, her head bowed. "Leave her," a deep voice said from nowhere. "Walk away now, and you may return to your home. No one will harm you." Jack clenched his jaw and kept moving. The image dissolved into mist. Halfway across, another figure appeared, Karek, holding a bloodied blade. "She used you," he said. "The bite was a trick. She only wanted a shield. She will cast you aside the moment you are safe." Jack ignored him, focusing on the rope beneath his hands. The wind picked up, swaying the bridge. His muscles burned from holding his balance. When he was just a few steps from the end, the worst vision came. This time it was Lyra again, but her eyes were cold. "You are nothing to me," she said. "Go back to your world." For a heartbeat, doubt flickered in Jack's mind. But then he remembered the way she had looked at him after each fight, the quiet pride, the worry when he was hurt. He knew which Lyra was real. He stepped onto the last plank and leapt to solid ground. The illusions vanished instantly. The crowd erupted into cheers. The elder rose from his seat. "The human has crossed the bridge of truth without faltering. The bond stands." Guards opened a side gate, and Lyra rushed to meet him. She didn't speak at first, only placed her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, steady. "You passed," she said softly. Jack smiled faintly. "Told you I would." The elder's voice carried over the arena. "By the laws of Vera, the trials are complete. The human is worthy. Prepare the ceremony of claim." The crowd's cheers grew louder, and petals of silver-colored flowers began to rain down from the higher seats. Lyra looked at Jack with an expression he couldn't quite read. Part relief, part something deeper. As they walked out together, Jack glanced back at the arena floor. The empty bridge still swayed gently in the wind, as if the trial was not truly over. Somewhere in his chest, he felt the weight of what was coming next. The bond was no longer just a tradition. It was a choice he had made, and one he intended to keep. The ceremonial hall was brighter than any place Jack had seen in Vera. Tall windows let in golden light, and the walls were draped with banners bearing the mark of Lyra's clan, a silver crescent over a black field. Rows of alien musicians played deep, echoing tones that vibrated in Jack's chest. He stood at the center of the hall beside Lyra. She was dressed in a long robe of shimmering fabric that shifted colors as she moved, from deep blue to silver. Her dark braids had been decorated with thin strands of glowing thread. Even the way she stood felt different, stronger, but also more careful, as if every movement carried meaning. The High Elder stepped forward, holding a carved staff. His voice was calm, but carried across the hall. The trials are complete. The claim stands. By our law, the bond must now be sealed before all. Jack tried to keep his breathing steady. This was more than a wedding. It was a public declaration that he was part of her clan, bound by law and tradition. The elder motioned for them to kneel on a round stone platform etched with glowing symbols. A servant approached with a small silver bowl filled with dark liquid. The elder dipped the tip of his staff into it, then touched the staff to Jack's hand, where Lyra's bite mark had faded to a faint scar. The liquid burned slightly, leaving a fresh mark in the shape of the clan's crescent. From this moment, the elder said, "You are one life." The crowd began a slow, rhythmic chant, their voices rising in waves. Lyra turned to him, her eyes fixed on his. "You could leave now," she whispered, so quietly he barely heard her over the chant. "If you wish to go back to your people, I will not stop you." Jack shook his head. "Not a chance. We've come this far." A flicker of something warm passed through her gaze. The elder raised both hands, and the chant stopped. The bond is sealed. But before the celebration could begin, the hall doors burst open. A messenger ran in, his robe torn, his face pale. "High Elder, the Black Fang clan approaches. They have crossed into our territory." A murmur spread through the hall. Lyra's hand tightened on Jack's. The elder's voice was grim. "They come to challenge the bond. If they can take the human before the sun sets, they can claim him." Jack's stomach turned. "So basically, they kidnap me, and it's all over?" Lyra's eyes were already sharp with focus. "Yes, and they will try." The elder began issuing orders. Guards rushed from the hall, blocking exits, locking gates. The musicians stopped playing, the room's energy shifting from ceremony to defense. Lyra led Jack to a side passage. "We have to move. They will expect you to hide inside the hall. We'll take you somewhere they won't think to look." They slipped through narrow corridors, lit only by thin beams of sunlight. The air smelled of dust and old stone. At one point, they passed a storage room where warriors were strapping on armor and weapons, ready to fight. As they reached a low courtyard, Jack heard the first clash of metal from somewhere beyond the walls. Shouts and the crack of energy weapons echoed in the distance. Lyra quickened her pace. They reached a small door at the base of a tower. Inside, a spiral staircase wound upward. Lyra gestured for him to go first. High ground is easier to defend. Halfway up, a crash sounded from below. Jack glanced down to see 3 Black Fang warriors forcing their way in, their armor darker and spiked compared to Lyra's clan. "Keep going!" Lyra shouted. They reached the top of the tower just as the first warrior stepped onto the stairs behind them. Lyra drew a curved blade from her belt and took position by the narrow entrance, her body blocking the way. Jack scanned the rooftop. The tower was small, with no way down except the stairs. In the distance, smoke was rising from the edge of the city where the fighting had started. The first attacker lunged at Lyra. She parried, the clash of blades ringing sharp in the air. Jack grabbed a loose chunk of stone from the roof and hurled it at the second warrior climbing up. It struck his shoulder, sending him back down a step. Lyra fought with a mix of speed and precision, but the enemy was strong. One blow knocked her back a step, and Jack jumped in, swinging the stone at the attacker's helmet. It cracked with a dull thud, and the warrior dropped to his knees. The others hesitated, seeing their comrade fall. A horn sounded from below, the signal for retreat. The Black Fang warriors backed away, disappearing down the stairs. Jack looked at Lyra, breathing hard. That was close. She wiped her blade clean. "It won't be the last time, but now they know you will not be taken easily." From the streets below, the sound of victory cries began to rise. The defenders had pushed the Black Fang back beyond the walls. The city was safe, for now. Lyra sheathed her blade and stepped closer. "The bond is sealed in tradition and now in battle. No one can challenge it again." Jack smiled faintly. "Good, because I'm starting to like this whole ours thing." For the first time since he met her, she let out a quiet laugh. "Then you are ready for what comes next." The city was quiet after the battle, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind that carried the weight of things left unsaid. The streets were littered with broken weapons, shattered market stalls, and the faint smell of smoke. Jack walked beside Lyra, their steps slow as they made their way back toward the heart of the clan's territory. The people they passed looked at him differently now. Some nodded with respect, others with curiosity. But no one looked at him like an outsider anymore. Lyra noticed it too. "They've accepted you," she said softly. "You are one of us now." Jack gave a small smile. "That's good. I was starting to feel like the world's most wanted prize." Her lips curved faintly. "You still are, but now anyone who tries to take you will have to go through me." They reached the clan hall where the High Elder waited. The tall doors closed behind them, shutting out the noise of the city. The hall was dim, except for the glow of the banners and the fire pit in the center. The elder stood with his staff, his eyes fixed on Jack. "You have passed the trials, defended the claim, and stood with us in battle," the elder said. "From this day you are bound to Lyra not just by bite and law, but by blood and deed." He motioned for them to step forward. A low table was set before the fire, bearing 2 silver cups. The elder poured a dark liquid into both, the scent rich and strange. "Drink," he said, "and your bond will be witnessed by the spirits of our ancestors." Jack took the cup. Lyra did the same. Their eyes met, and without a word, they drank. The liquid burned going down, leaving a warmth that spread through his chest and arms. The elder struck his staff against the stone floor. "It is done." A cheer rose from the few clan members in the hall. Drums began to beat outside, and the sound spread through the city. News of the sealing had already begun to travel. That night, the clans celebrated. Fires lit every street, music filled the air, and the smell of roasting meat drifted from open kitchens. Jack sat with Lyra on a raised platform, sharing food as people came to greet them. Some brought gifts, woven cloth, carved ornaments, strange fruits glowing faintly in the dark. As the celebration went on, Lyra leaned toward him. "This will be your life now," she said. "Our people, our struggles, our victories." Jack nodded slowly. "I can live with that." But as the music played, he noticed movement at the edge of the crowd. A hooded figure slipped between the revelers, heading toward the platform. The figure stopped a few steps away and pulled back the hood, revealing a narrow, sharp-featured face. It was one of the Black Fang clan. Before Jack could stand, the man raised his hands to show he carried no weapon. "I come with a message," he said, his voice low but carrying. "The Black Fang will not challenge the bond again, but others will." Lyra's hand tightened on Jack's. "Why warn us?" she asked. The man's eyes flicked toward Jack. "Because there are clans beyond the mountains who have not forgotten the old ways. They will see the human as a threat or a prize worth taking." Jack frowned. "And what exactly am I supposed to do about that?" The man's mouth curved in a humorless smile. "Stay alive. That will be enough to make them fear you." He pulled his hood up and disappeared into the crowd before they could stop him. Lyra looked at Jack, her expression unreadable. "He's right. They will come." Jack leaned back slightly, watching the fires burn across the city. "Then let them. I've already survived worse." The rest of the night passed in a blur of dancing, laughter, and the constant rhythm of drums. But in the back of Jack's mind, the warning stayed like a shadow. He knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a much larger fight. When the celebration finally ended and the fires began to die down, Lyra walked with him to the quiet steps outside the clan hall. The night sky above was clear, the stars sharp and bright. She stood beside him, looking up at them. "You could have left that first day in the market," she said. "Why didn't you?" Jack thought about it for a moment. "Because you bit me," he said with a small grin. "And I guess I'm starting to understand what that means." Her eyes softened. "Then we are both bound, by choice." They stood in silence for a while, the city slowly settling into sleep. Jack knew danger was still out there, waiting. But for now, he had a place, a people, and someone worth fighting for. And no matter who came for him next, he was ready.